Okay, so in today's video, we are going to discuss how to crush the London system with the black pieces by looking at a game. And this particular variation we are going to talk about today is not pretty like a memorial, but I would say it's more about structure based. So it's easy to learn and you can score some heavy points against your opponent. So I don't want to waste any further time, so let's start. So we have a game between Kamsky Gata versus Magnus Carlsen from the 2008 Moscow Tal Memorial Blitz. It's a blitz game, but a very interesting game. So Kamsky Gata started the game with a 1d4, we have knight f6, knight to f3, e6, and now we have bishop to f4. After bishop f4, we have the London, and the question is how to continue the game. After bishop f4, Carlsen played the move c5. What's the idea? We have e3, and here Magnus decided to take on d4. e4, and now we have b6. So what's happening in this position? So I would say it's more like a Queen's Indian defense type structure, where you put the pawn on b6 followed by bishop b7, and black's position is pretty flexible. Like we have c3, bishop b7, knight d2, and now bishop e7. Black puts the bishop on b7 and e7, and he takes on d4 first. We have h3, just making room for the bishop to go back. Short castle, bishop d3, and now we have d6. Short castle, knight bd7, rook e1, queen c7, a4. So a4, white's idea is to play a5. So black plays a6 in this position, very important move. So that whenever white plays a5, black can play the move b5. Okay, so till here, everything is pretty standard, I would say. Bishop h2, rook e8, queen b3, and just developing the pieces, that's it. Bishop f8, and till here, black need not to do anything, but simply copy the structure. Like whenever you are playing against the London system, you need not to do anything, but just play the moves that Magnus played in the game. Like it's basically a structure, and it doesn't matter what white does, you need to play these moves, that's it. That's so simple. Like all the 14 moves, you're completely prepared. And you're going to have something like this position because white is not really having anything except this idea. So bishop f8. So what's happening in this position? What is the idea of this position? So here, first of all, you will realize black is having the pawn on the b file and the a file. So basically, black's idea is to play on the queen side. Basically, black's idea is eventually to get the b5 in. White takes, we play b4, we take over here, and white is eventually having the c3 weakness. And black is going to focus on trying to capture white c3 pawn and eventually be a pawn up and eventually win the game. So it's the best way to play. And it's pretty easy for black to black is already having a target. We have rook e2 and now we have bishop c6. So the question is, how will you try to get the b5 in? So here, black plays bishop c6, queen b7 and try to get the b5 in. That's the basic idea that black usually go for. c4, so white is also trying to somehow get maybe d5 in and something. We have queen b7. So first of all, black is also threatening an eye on the g2 square and also focusing on trying to push b5. We have rook e1, and now the question here is you can't play b5 because white can simply take over here, take, and you can't really take because white would be a piece up. So it's not really working up. So here we simply play d5. What's the idea? After g5, you are basically removing the cover of the b5 square, and after white takes anything, our idea is eventually to get b5 in. So white takes, and here we take with the bishop. I think if we try to capture with the knight, after knight c4, we can't really play b5 because white is having this knight a5 which attacks the bishop and the queen. So that was the whole idea that black first took with the bishop. We have bishop c4, and here, once again, you can't really play b5 because after takes, white can take with the queen. And this is already a pawn up position for white. So in this position, you will realize that the rook on 8 is not really doing anything. So Magnus decided to put the a rook to the open file, which is the c file. And after rook c8, we have bishop takes, and here, like you can already understand the position that the end game is already better for black. The question is why? Because first of all, white is having an isolated pawn on the d4 square, and I would say the b4 square is also a bit weak, so going into the end game is no problem for black. So definitely this position is at least a draw or a win for black because black is having absolutely no weaknesses in this position and white is having a couple of weaknesses. So after knight d5, we have knight to e4. So the idea is to play knight to d6 and try to get this bishop, so that white's dark square bishop would be extremely powerful, covering all the dark squares. So here black first decide to play rook to c6, covering the d6 square and also preparing to put his other rook on the c8 square. We have knight to e5, and Magnus is like, fine, let's check on e5. So it looks like why Magnus gave up his, allowed white to remove his isolated pawn and took on e5. So the problem here is, black is still having the advantage, and it's not like Magnus gave up his advantage, but it's more like he shifted his advantage. In this position, he was having the long-term advantage because white is having the isolated pawn, but it's not really easy for black to attack the pawn, as the pawn is already defended. So he allowed white to go for this, and here once again this is at least a draw or win for black, because black's knight is extremely well placed on d5. Rook is coming on c8, having the full control of the c file, and yeah, maybe just getting in with the rooks, creating some chances is the idea. So we have rook c8, bishop to g3, and now we have bishop d4 attacking the rook. Rook moves, and now we have rook to c1, trading one pair of the rook, king h2, and now we have h6. So a very flexible play by Magnus, first covering his all weaknesses. Like the only weakness in the black camp was the weak king that could have been checkmated in the future, like back rank mate and stuff. So first he played h6, and now we have f3. We have rook to a1 attacking the pawn. We have rook to c2, and here we have the move king to h7. So if you try to capture this pawn in this position, white's idea is maybe to just give a check, kick this king in, and maybe just try to punish this pawn, maybe somehow like knight to d6. Like if you take over here, this is already better for white. So first, Magnus took some precautions by king h7, and now his idea is to put the king on g6 and protect the pawns. So we have bishop to f2, attacking this pawn, but here Magnus simply chop off the pawn. And it's already like a blunder of the pawn. I think b3 could have been played, but I think this pawn is still losing after maybe something like rook over here. And this pawn is still there, you can't really protect the pawn. I don't really see any way. So we have bishop to f2 attacking the pawn, but though it's already protected by the knight, we have rook into a4, knight to d6, and now we have king to g6, protecting the f7 pawn, and now we have rook to c4 in this position. So after rook to c4, white's idea is to play rook g4 check and then capture the pawn on f7. So here Magnus decided to play f5, covering the g4 square, and here if white tries to end past this position, the knight is actually falling with a check, and the rook is hanging for white. So this is already winning. So we have rook to c6, and now we have bishop to d2 in this position. The point here is, if you try to capture over here, I can take over here at least, or I can simply start with a I can at least start with a check and take over here, which is completely winning for black. So that's why we have g3, b5. So you can eventually understand that black's whole play is on the queen side. We have pawn push, knight comes over here, and now we have rook to a2. Black going for another pawn. We have rook e6, king goes back, bishop comes, bishop to e3, trading off the bishop, but first giving a check, taking the bishop, and now black is just 2 pawns up. Okay, 1 pawn is dead now, but here we come to check and take the pawn. So Magnus basically gobbled all the pawns, and now this is completely winning position. He even traded the knights, and after rook checks, rook to e6, the position is winning. So on the move number 50, Kamsi Gata decided to resign the game, and Magnus Carlsen simply won the game. So I would say it's pretty, if you want any weapon, an easy weapon to understand and play, I think this particular variation is the best variation and the opening you can play in your games against the London. Like you play knight f6, e6, you play c5, you take on d4, you play b6, bishop b7, bishop e7, short castle, put the pawn on d6, put the knight on d7, put the queen on c7, get the a6 in, and eventually, because your idea is to play bishop c6, queen d7, and b5, so we have bishop h2, rook e8, bishop f8. Just in the whole idea of playing rook e8, bishop f8 was to basically fortify the king. Like there are no real weaknesses, there can't really be any sacks. At the worst case, if white is somehow attacking on the king side, you can simply play g6 and there won't be any attacks. And then you can simply move on with your idea with bishop c6, queen d7, b5, which is the perfect idea in this position. And that's exactly what Magnus did. And it's a perfect game played by Magnus. So yeah, I think it is one of the best opening you can play against the London system if you really want your opponent to be out of his preparation and you want to be in the preparation. So yeah, it's the best thing you can do. Just watch the games in this particular variation and you would be having like a master how to crush the London system with the black pieces. So guys, that's it I think for this video. So if you learned anything new from this video, I think you must have did, then like the video, share this video with everyone, and make sure to subscribe to our channel, because only 10% of the viewers have subscribed the channel and still 90% of the viewers have not subscribed the channel. It's free for you guys, but it helps us to motivate to make more videos like this. So yeah, so I think that's it. And I'm going to go for like out for a chess tournament for the 5 days, so I won't be able to come up with any particular video, so sorry about that. I'm going to see you soon, so till then stay tuned and keep watching. Bye bye.